Hello there. My name is Vanessa Zamy, and I'm known as the Business Defibrillator. I'm the president, owner, and CEO of LiberationX Contracts. What does that mean? Well, liberation means freedom. X is X chromosome. So you put that together. But ultimately, the way I've been in business for about 6 years, my business started out, well, two businesses. So started out helping out entrepreneurs and then evolved into helping those small business mom and pop type shops, which then evolves into then supporting now office spaces. So think of mid-sized companies, government agencies, and supporting them with their professional development, their leadership, their learning.
The genre of business that you chose to get into, what sparked your interest in it?
Well, Ken, there's a long answer and there's a short answer. So I'm going to do the medium answer.
Okay.
So I was raised in Brooklyn, New York, and Boston, Massachusetts by a single mother. And I bring that up because I didn't know about entrepreneurship at that time in my life. And so my journey was I went into university. I'm going to be a neurosurgeon, loved the classes, but I didn't quite have the in-depth reason that I felt called to. So then decided to pivot into business and corporate America life. So right out of university, went into corporate strategy and corporate consulting. It was, my first corporate job, definitely not my first job, working since I was 13, but that's my first corporate job. And that was a whole experience in and of itself, being a woman in corporate America, being a Black woman in corporate America. And I learned a lot during my experience doing consulting, doing strategy consulting, different industries, different companies, from media, technology to financial services to a consumer nuclear manufacturing company. So worked with different companies on different projects and different goals and initiatives that they had in mind. But while that time, it was definitely a lot of, I'm going to say, within the first 2 to 3 months of that role in corporate America, I definitely had my first panic attack in life. But I stayed, because what we do with toxic relationships, we stay sometimes. So I stayed and for some time, for a number of years, and I had my experiences. But then eventually I switched companies. And so then I went to a different company, and that company had a wonderful culture, great culture. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I was included. But ultimately, then what happened was I had a bad boss. And so, although the culture was great, the boss wasn't so great. But hey, I knew how to play the chess game. And so I managed up effectively. I worked and skipped over and connected with VPs in the company and built my network of people and supportive networks who were there for me and who advocated for me when my boss didn't know how to. Okay. And why? Because, toxic leader, competitive for some reason. It felt it was the whole thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I also was, navigating HR as well, trying to get some advice and guidance on how to connect and relate to that person. At the same time, I'm connecting with the VP at the company, and the VP introduces me to a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. Now, no matter your thoughts around that author, the book itself was very informative. That was my introduction into how accessible entrepreneurship is, what entrepreneurship is about, and the small business, that whole small business realm in America. And that America, doesn't run on Dunkin' Donuts. It runs on small business. And it wasn't, small business entrepreneurship wasn't just the tech companies and the people who were driving Teslas at the time, but it was because essentially at the time that I learned all this, it was around the beginning stages of Tesla. I was in California, I was in Silicon Valley, but there was a disconnect between me and this entrepreneurship world. And it wasn't until I read that book that it started to come together in terms of small business, entrepreneurship, all that jazz. So now with that knowledge, I was like, wait a second, all those years, I think I was like 25, 26 or so, but all those years of my mother saying, wish I had started a restaurant business and all that jazz and yes, it is difficult. Entrepreneurship is a marathon, but ultimately there was definitely a lot of information around it. And that ultimately is what the American dream is about. So then my first instance of my business 6 years ago was really around helping entrepreneurs and women, helping people catalyze their vision. And that was the name of my first company, Your Vision's Catalyst, helping people catalyze their vision, helping people to understand, the strategy behind it. So I was taking my big company strategy into the small business entrepreneurship world.
Brilliant.
And
that's brilliant.
So then in the last phase, the most recent phase of this story was in the past year and a half, really looking at developing LiberationX and LiberationX contract. And what that is about is recognizing and understanding that yes, it sounds cool. Do your business, start your business. There might be someone listening here right now where you're saying to yourself, that boss is bad. I want to start my business, and you want to do that whole I'm gonna quit it and just start it type thing. Now, for me, my business, once I learned about entrepreneurship, I actually kept my day job and grew the business on the side of the day job and then made the switch. Other people do it in different ways, depending on your resources, depending on what you have going on. With that being said, entrepreneurship is a marathon and it's not for everyone. And no matter where you're coming from in your corporate space, it is, you still don't know what you don't know when it comes to entrepreneurship. Okay. And so you got to take that humble pie and figure it out as you go along. And you get the support that you need, whether it be a consultant, whether it be listening to podcasts, whatever it may be. But recognizing that entrepreneurship is also not for everyone. And there are people who need to, you're in maybe you're not in a psychologically safe space at work. Maybe you're dealing with that bad boss, that toxic leader. Maybe you're in a culture that isn't as conducive to you. Maybe you're ultimately living a life where you're getting the panic attack or you're getting the experiences of what is happening, what is going on. And there are or how can I navigate all the hats that I'm wearing, especially if you're a wife, a mother, a community member, all the things you got going on with your ambition and what you're trying to achieve. And how do you navigate and balance that effectively without the burnout? How do you recover from burnout if you're already there? And how do you really navigate being a well-being person? Okay, being a person who is well. And so that is what LiberationX is about, is helping women, but also helping their colleagues and others around them in their workplaces to be better so they can do better, not only for the people around them, but also mainly for themselves too.
Yeah, you go root to cause and not just the effect of the cause, because a lot of people like to put a Band-Aid on a symptom. They don't get to the root cause of what's making the workplace dysfunctional. And there are so many different layers, from environment to internal environment to readiness to expectation and reality, not there being no bridge between that. Us not being assimilated properly into these environments, as well as just not having the overall knowledge of what's going to happen once we arrive there. I love too that you said entrepreneurship is not for everyone. So many people want to wear this badge of honor of saying, I am running a successful business. I'm making all of these dollars. I'm the boss. I'm employing people.
Yep. I was literally just talking to someone about that earlier today, actually. And it was, because in business coaching, business consulting, what we say is entrepreneurship is only 20% strategy. That all the time we spend, where should I post? What should I do? Let me figure out the plan. That's only 20% of it. The other 80% is the mindset. And it's, if you don't have the mindset, you will, either figure it out and learn the mindset and figure out who you need to be, as you mentioned, who you need to be in order to show up as you need to be, in order to get that business in the place where you want it to be, or you will not.
Yeah.
And you will learn really quickly that it ends up being a choice each day to show up as you need to be, to evolve as you need to be, to get the support that you need, to help you evolve as you need to be, in order to get that vision to be what it needs to be.
Absolutely. I love that you demystify the realistic emotions and the cycles of emotions that entrepreneurs go throughout the process, and you kind of take away that layer of glam flair that people have. I think people have a lot of delusions of grandeur going into business, and they don't realize you need mental fortitude, because it will break you down, and you really need to develop grit if you don't already have it.
Yes. And the things that even if you do have grit, you still got to shed some layers. It's like it doesn't matter what, like, even if you thought you were strong, but you then get stronger. And so it's even I've had to shed some things, evolve some things, even to get to this point where I'm sitting here in this moment. And in 2 months from now, there's going to be another evolution of who Vanessa Zamy is, based on whatever has happened between now and the next 2 months. And so it's all this evolving process. And I have to tell people, it's not that, Oprah or Tony Robbins or Tyler Perry, it's not that, they have a different, so to speak, composite of body than we do. Like, they're not human. No, they are human. What happens is that through their evolution, they develop different tools, resources, people around them to help them as they go through, right? To help them remember that grit, to help them have that strength that they need in mind, body, and soul to make the decisions they need to make, to decide to show up the way they need to show up, and all the things in between.
Self-care and synergy pave your path to success because it literally is a journey. You have to be in alignment with those you bring along with you. And always be a student of life, be a student of business, be a student of your network, and pivot as you need to. Coming out of a space of ego and being like, hey, this hasn't worked. I haven't lost 5 years. I've literally gained a lesson and an experience. And this 6th year might be the year where I get the results that I want if I'm willing to shed my attachment to what's not serving me. Yeah. So it's the same.
That literally was my journey. I was like, the first 5 years, it worked some spaces. It had to tweak in other spaces. And then we ended up in the 6th year. And so it's always an evolution where you're taking the past lessons with you. And this is a phrase that I heard recently, like a year ago or so, that I use. Like, either I win or I learn. Either I win or I learn.
Words to live
by. It's yes. And so it's one of those things where it helps you when I'm deciding on something, making a decision, where it's like, I'm either going to win or learn. You know, there are bigger problems that we need to work on. I'm either going to win or learn, right? And it's being open to that and recognizing that year 2 will be better than year 1 if you are better than you were in year 1, right? If you are conscious and aware of what you did in year 1 that you don't want to repeat in year 2, or that you do want to repeat in year 2. And part of that mental fortitude is giving grace to yourself. Practicing it, part of that self-care is practicing that grace with yourself, practicing the grace you have other people as well, and recognizing that, you know, you might be angry at this person, but what is it about what's happening outside that also reflects what's happening inside as well too, that you might need to evolve and change.
Absolutely.
And it's, you know, the synergy that you talk about, it's all evolving. It's all encompassing, all related, all connected.
What are some like positive, I like to say positive self-talks, like what are some positive self-talk points or some specific self-care routines that you go to keep yourself grounded and aligned, like in those times, like you're pivoting the most? What do you do to keep yourself grounded?
You know, that is such a great question. I'm going to talk it out loud because it's been an evolution of what I've done. So I know like the first year, one of the things that I was doing, the affirmations that I was living in California at the time, and I had Post-it notes of affirmations, but ultimately it was on a whiteboard because it wouldn't stick to the mirror. So stuck on a whiteboard there in the room. But ultimately it was that first affirmation, I am enough. I have everything I need to create everything that I want. That was the other affirmation that I still remember to this day. Now they're within me and still within me. And there were like 2 more as well too, right? So that was like the first, that was even before the first year. That I think even helped me to even be open to the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, to the idea of entrepreneurship. I was even saying that even before I even started the business. And then as I evolved, it became a bunch of other different affirmations. And one of the decisions that I made in 2023 was that I would follow the fear. And so I started to recognize what fear felt like within me, and having that feeling of what does fear look like within me. And then having that, from that awareness, deciding, okay, when I feel that, it means I need to follow it. Because only in following it will I then grow or change. Either I will win or I will learn from whatever it is I need to from following that fear. And so that is something that I carried on even into this year 24, where it's follow the fear. When I had that feeling, when I feel that fear, to follow it. And that's the main thing I would say that I actually do. And then the other sort of self-talk, verbal affirmations. So I also listen to this when I feel myself like getting into this level of doubt and stuff of that nature. Yeah. What I also do is I have an abundance video that I listen to for 50 minutes.
Good for you.
Me too. And I'm just like, we're gonna lay on this bed, we're gonna press play. And then the other thing, there's another 3 minutes and 20 seconds. I forget what it's called, but it's by, I want to say her name is Toni Morris, not Toni Morrison. No, that's the author, but it's someone else. And she also does like these little, they're kind of like musical affirmation proverb type thing.
Toni Jones, I think.
Yes, there.
I love her.
And so there's one of her videos that I'll listen to as well. Those are the top things that are popping up for me as I'm looking into my brain to see if anything else is top of mind. Yeah, but in terms of self-talk, those are the top things. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And then we have some things that come in. Like I love listening to positive affirmation videos that have like these high frequency sounds that kind of help me really quiet my mind and zone out. That is my jam. So yeah, it's Toni Jones. One of my favorite albums that she came out with is from 20 I See Me Mantras. I don't know if you specifically have listened to that one, but that one I can play from start to finish, and it's just like this. It's like this gentle coasting on just all this positivity and this self-realization. And you're like, I really am getting out of my own way with the self-awareness. So I love that you highlighted being aware of how you feel. Some of my clients, some of them don't know how to even verbalize the way that their body feels, the thoughts that their minds are thinking, and that misalignment, like in their nervous system, why they're kind of hesitant to take action, the thought, the speak, everything. They don't know how to even describe it in words. They don't have the vocabulary.
Yeah, that was me. That used to be so one of the many things that I've evolved in during entrepreneurship. We talk about that marathon was I learned about in January 21, the feelings wheel.
The feelings wheel.
And that was for me what got me to that point where I could recognize, what does fear feel like for me? But for me, the feelings wheel, January 21, I still use it to this day. I still tell people to use it as well. Like it for me is what helps me to vocalize the words around what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way and what do I want to feel and what can make me feel, that other emotion that I would rather feel. And that for me was kind of the start. I would say that was the start for me in terms of emotional understanding of myself, because I didn't use those words when I was younger. That was in the household I grew up in. That wasn't the thing. It's like you feel what you feel, but you keep moving. And and so you don't really feel what you feel, but you think you are, but you're not really. So that was the whole thing. But yeah, for me, the feelings wheel is what really helped me in January 21. When someone told me about that, I was like, oh man, let me tell you, if you're listening to this episode, look up feelings wheel.
It's a game changer, because you have this moment where you're like, okay, you can be angry, but am I frustrated or am I disappointed? You know what I'm saying?
Right? It makes a difference.
Thank you for your transparency. Just the enlightenment. And I love to see it.
Yes, hopefully this helps whoever's listening right now. Something else that I remember that I do. So what I started doing a few months ago was on my phone and my phone calendar. So first I got like a list of like 30 to 35 wealth abundance statements. And I adapted it and adjusted it based on what felt right for me. And then each day is programmed one of those statements and phrases, but at a different time. Because I know for me, if I do it at the same time, I don't know, 8 a.m., I'm going to do that statement again. It loses, for me at least, it loses its luster. It loses its sort of benefit, because I'm like, 8 a.m., I'm going to get that thing. You're onto something. Versus like seeing it at the right time, at the right place, kind of thing. And so I essentially schedule it at different times. And I put it on like it's 32 phrases. So it's on a 32-day rotation. So it's also not happening at the same day every month. And so, so I put it on different times of the day, different phrases come up, one phrase a day, different days. So I also love that. What popped up this morning was wealth is all around me, #gratitude.
That was a theme of an affirmation that I shared with some friends in my close network, because what I have been coming across this week is people being afraid to align with larger values monetarily. Like they're kind of being blocked by a scarcity mindset. Like, it's not okay for me to ask for more, or it's not okay for me to require more from those who I have to help. And I love that abundance is all around me.
And that's really helpful too. And it was right place, right time. Why? Because yesterday I just got into a new place.
We're going to get right back to the talk, but I want to offer you a free gift. I know. No, it's actually free. Like, you don't have to pay anything. There's no shipping and handling or no processing fee. Literally, all you have to do is click the link, download the Self-Care Your Way to Success Chakra Alignment Journal, and start journaling and start your path to wellness. It's going to help you get aligned in mind, body, and spirit, help you organize your entrepreneurial goals, and help you get back centered and fill your cup so you can pour back into the communities that you serve. So click the link, download your free copy of Self-Care to Success Chakra Alignment Journal. And then give me some feedback. Let me know what you want to see in this journal, because this is the cool part about the virtual journal. As I add more to it, you get the updates. So no, you'll never have to buy another journal. You'll never have to download another version of it. You're going to get all of the updates as the new editions come out. And this is like my gift back to humanity. This is my gift back to the almost 600 women who have joined in solidarity to support the success of this podcast. And I want to see you all prioritizing your self-care. So click the link, get your self-care journal, and let's get back to this talk with this wonderful, wonderful woman in business.
Got into a new place in Houston, Texas. And so now, I'm connected with the host. I'm like, okay, so, like in the past, I would have been like, oh, let me just adapt. Let me just deal with this, just me shrinking in the chair.
Yes.
And now I've definitely like embraced, it's okay to ask. The worst they can say is no. At least I asked.
Yeah. They have everything on Instagram every few seconds. She said, you are worth the inconvenience. If somebody feels inconvenienced and they're supposed to be accommodating you in a sense, you're worth the inconvenience. It's okay.
Interesting.
Or I don't even really like the word inconvenience, but you're worth being accommodated. Yeah. You're worth the expense.
But that reminds me, the other self-talk affirmation for this year that came up in 24 was, because I started recognizing, people were talking about that Karen person in 23.
Yes.
And then it was towards the end of 23, beginning of 24, where I was like, but Karen gets what she wants though.
Karen gets what she wants.
Like, she may not go about it in the right way that I would go, but at the end of the day, she gets results. It's Karen. And so I started to think about Karen in terms of, it's okay for me to ask.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask in the way Vanessa Zamy asks, not the way Karen asks, but the idea of like first step is asking. The first step is asking.
The first step is you don't even know.
Being okay with asking.
There are so many times where I tell people, well, did you ask? You are making the assumption that people have the same ideology, beliefs, and way of thinking as you when you don't open the door with the question. You literally, the answer absolutely is no, because you didn't even ask for it yet.
Yeah.
You decided that it was no when you didn't ask. Brilliant. It could be a good surprise, a bad surprise. But what has been one of the most surprising aspects of you transitioning into entrepreneurship since coming out of corporate America?
That I kept the day job and the business for the first 2 years or so before transitioning out. And I think that helped to reduce the level of surprise. Actually, what comes to mind for me is from the time that I then left my corporate job until now. So I left the corporate job in 2021. From that time up until now, what are the different, say, journeys that I've been through in terms of evolution journeys, self-awareness journeys that I've been through since then? What initially surprised me, I think, was how bad I was at money is what initially surprised me. How bad I was at managing financial cash flow. And so, like I mentioned, I increased my salary by 72% not in the first year, but like in a 3-year frame while I was in corporate America. And then, so I ended up in the 6-figure range, all of that jazz. Things are looking great outside, but internally, because all the mental health and all the things that were happening while I was in the corporate space. But then I left that job and now I'm in, the business is the only financial source. And then I started seeing patterns of what I was doing. They were like, with the ups and downs and things of that nature. But my contribution in those ups and downs through my decisions, I don't like sitting in problems though. So I quickly then went through a process. I hired a money coach. I was like, help me figure this out. What is going on? Why are these things happening? And every 6 months or so, it's a new lesson that I'm learning around cash flow management, financial management, projections, and doing all that jazz. And I'm in a much better place now, 4 years later, than I was then. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that. But I say for me, that was surprising for me. It was sort of how much I was telling money I didn't want it without knowing that I was telling money.
That's profound. Telling money you don't want it without knowing that's what you're saying.
Yes. Like I thought I was saying I wanted it, right? Because I had the goals, right? But ultimately there were actions and things I was doing that was telling it that I didn't want it. And so
that's so relatable. I have to say my first year really earning 6 figures on my own in my business was the first year where I wasted a lot of money on just unreasonable things, thinking that I needed them. So I definitely relate to that. And it's that by the end of that year, I had hired a financial advisor because I was like, I cannot do this again. Okay, this is crazy, because when you really look at the numbers, you're like, I'm just thinking, I think we had this like air of like, no, I'm doing everything right. And with money, like what I'm getting from what you're saying is, just like with business, growing and pivoting and learning what you need along the way, it's the same thing with your money journey.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your relationship journey. It's the same thing. Wow. Your level.
The whole thing, I also did a whole relationship wellness thing too, journey as well, the last couple of years, but that's outside the business.
I love your level of self-awareness and the role that it has played in your transition from working in corporate America and then transitioning into being the president of your own business. It speaks volumes about what really is needed for that, to build that foundation. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, the self is all those components, right? It's all the components of financial, relationship, right? I talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. And that was something that was studied even in the 90s and developed by Dr. Peggy Swarbrick. And her experience was working with people who had addiction issues and substance abuse issues. And the 8 dimensions of wellness is financial wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, social wellness, occupational wellness. And it's looking at how are those, and not only just, in addition to the physical wellness and the emotional wellness, but it's looking at how those different components, when they're at a optimal place, then you are at your optimal being. But when one is off, it does impact all the other areas because it's impacting how you're showing up, or even if you're showing up in different spaces. And so
I'm literally going to go back through this video and take notes and be like, these are some things I can implement. And so in alignment with a lot of the things that you, so thank you.
I'm going to receive that. It's also something I'm working on this year, receiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for your time and your presence, like literally. With the things that you've shared about your own personal hurdles or transitions that you've overcome in your industry right now, taking on corporate clients, what's one of your biggest challenges that you face?
2 sides of my business. One is working with the corporate mid-sized company realm, and the other side is working with government agencies. So the challenge that's happening with the government agencies is obviously there's a new administration coming into play. And so they're all navigating, okay, who are the new leaders? What are the new budgets, etc. But that's also an opportunity because they can probably benefit from the conflict resolution support that I have a team of 15 trainers and 6 coaches. And so some of them are specialized in conflict resolution. And so, right, that's probably going to be needed, or even team alignment and team coaching as they bring in new leaders into their teams. On the corporate side of things, there's a whole DI conversations that were happening and court cases that were happening. And so those were some challenges, but the opportunity is to rethink what we're saying, how we're saying it, in terms of inclusion and belonging and accessibility, and how we're approaching companies from that perspective. I would say another challenge was, because actually it's kind of related to, where because of the uncertainty around what 2025 was going to look like in terms of costs for these corporate companies, they were also, at the end of this year, calendar year 2024, they're kind of like, okay, we'll just see what's happening, taking their time, pausing, but they still have the same goals and initiatives. And so for me, it's looking at what are other different solutions that we could potentially offer that maybe are not the big package, but could be just smaller versions of the packages, and what we're offering to help support their employee retention process, their employee engagement, their employee morale, helping them with their culture revitalization as well as needed, and with their well-being, their sense of what well-being looks like in the workplace for individual leaders, for individual managers, but also as a whole, what does that culture of well-being in the workplace actually look like for their company?
It's so intricate. It has so many moving parts that could be definitely seen as you totally having to re-navigate the way you interact with your government contracts. And you took so many positive gems and jewels from it to say, wait, there's an opportunity here.
That's entrepreneurship. Every challenge, every threat could be an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. What a optimistic way of looking at challenges. You have to look at challenge as an opportunity to show up and pivot.
That's how every chapter of your life book is written. Yes. You got to conclude the first chapter to get to the second one. You got to conclude that second one to get to the third one. The conclusion is not in the gray space area of, oh, I don't know. No, that's not a conclusion. That's still a chapter being written. So you got to close the chapter to get to the next one.
So what are your predictions for the future of your industry, and how do you plan to stay steady on your path, maybe like 5 years from now? Or is that even a realistic foresight for you? Or is it something you just transition into as you go?
I would say if we think about my industry, well, if we define my industry as the well-being industry, workplace well-being industry, if we define it like that, then in about 5 to 10 years, right, I'm going to say what I hope will happen. But there are many things that could play into not making that happen. But what I hope and predict will happen in 5 to 10 years when it comes to workplace well-being is that every company, or most companies in the Fortune 500 space, definitely in the Inc. 5000, most companies will have a workplace well-being program that is beyond the benefits, EAP, employee assistance programming thing. So what companies typically have, for example, right now is they have, you could do 401k with us. And, what we also practice help care for your well-being, because you can also, you also get like PTO as well. And we also care about your well-being because look, a discount to this gym. The thing about is that when you look at these employee assistance programs, EAPs, they're called, they all look generally the same.
They do. No diversity. They're breadcrumbing.
Exactly, right? And so for what I see, I hope that within the next 2 to 3 years, companies realize that they all look the same and need to differentiate themselves when it comes to recruiting new talent, when it comes to and differentiating yourself as a company and a brand. And with that being said, in the next 5 to 10 years, I hope then that means that they will then work to have workplace well-being and workplace wellness programs that are beyond this generic sort of thing that everyone else has. And hopefully they'll call on LiberationX contracts to help support that.
I think that's a positive vision and foresight for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think it definitely highlights and shines a light on how when we speak about diversity and inclusion, there needs to be diverse and inclusive solutions as well. Because you can't have the same solutions for beginners like you have for intermediate, just like you have for admin and corporate leaderships. And with this administration in office, like I am excited about the opportunities, the fiscal opportunities that are going to present themselves with the current administration that we're having. But I'm also staying kind of like watchful, like, okay, where is this really going? Because we don't know, but
we don't know, but as entrepreneurs, it's like plan A, plan B, plan C.
What I would like to know is where can people find you and connect with you, your target audience, like business owners, small business owners, and corporate teams? Where can they find you if they want to reach out and connect with you? Or I don't know what's going on with me today. I think I need to eat a snack or something. But how can people connect with you? Where can they find you on social media, your website, and anything else that you want to share about upcoming events, what you're doing, and how people can connect with you?
Awesome. I'll give up 3 ways. So in terms of, I'm also available as a speaker at different conferences. So I speak at different women's-based conferences, but also just conferences related to learning and development and HR. And so if someone is listening here and you're interested in bringing me into your company or bringing me into your next event, you can go on vanessazamy.com. So it's my full name, and look at more information there and just submit inquiry. And then that's one. The second thing is that every quarter I release a sort of report. So it's not an art, it's beyond an article. It's like a 10 minutes read report on LinkedIn via my newsletter called the Business Defibrillator. And there are different topics. And that topic was on the connection between trauma and in the workplace, and then employee retention and employee turnover. And so I did a whole sort of report around that. And well, you'll just have to subscribe to it. So hop on my LinkedIn and just type in Vanessa Zamy. You should be able to find me, and just subscribe to that newsletter, and feel free to connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn as well. And that is where I mostly am, on LinkedIn.
Well, I am definitely subscribing to your newsletter, and I'm so excited about this interview. For the culture is needed for the industry. Thank you so much for your time, Vanessa Zamy.
Yes, listeners, we'll be in the Bahamas for a wellness retreat, so join us in there.
Do you want to highlight some of the things that you'll be talking about there? Or
so Ken and I will be speaking at a resort in the Bahamas in 2025. So if you listen to this episode before then, and so ultimately, I have a couple different topics. So one is going to be on goal setting for the years, along with the business strategy as well for the year. Business is only 20% strategy, it's 80% mindset. So what is that personal strategy that you need as well for yourself, for your well-being? And then my keynote signature talk that I do is around defibrillate your life to reinvigorate your career, your business, your personal life, depending on who you are as an audience member. And
Thank
yes,
you so
thank you for having me. Thank you.